Welcome to the Climate Change and Health in Rural Mountain Environments, a collaborative workshop series organized and funded by Appalachian State University. I'm Jen Runkle. I'm a research scientist at the North Carolina Institute for Climate Studies at NC State and a research assistant professor within the Department of Geography and Planning at App State. The goal of the workshop is to identify research needs at the intersection of climate, health, and rural environments. We have a phenomenal lineup of speakers for the morning session and a very productive afternoon session planned. So what do we know? Essentially, the climate crisis is real and it's happening now. It's us. Human activities are the main culprit. Experts agree. More than 99% of the world's climate experts are convinced, based on science, that human activity is causing our planet to warm. And it's not good. The impacts are serious and affect people, especially children, older adults, persons with chronic illnesses, and members of low income and communities of color. But there is hope. There are so many actions that we can take to address climate change and improve our health in equitable ways. Research has shown that the health impacts of climate change are varied and wide-ranging, but the bulk of this research has actually been focused on urban areas, and rural communities have often been overlooked in a national narrative around climate change. Rural America continues to acutely experience the negative effects of climate change. And in fact, in recent years, farmers across the nation have faced historic flooding and extreme weather that's jeopardized both their personal health and economic livelihoods. Rural communities face important barriers in responding to and preparing for climate change risk. These barriers include physical isolation, limited economic diversity, higher poverty rates, combined with an aging and chronically ill population. All of these factors serve to increase the vulnerability of rural communities to climate change. One way that we can overcome barriers to climate resilience in these areas is to move beyond stereotypes. Since the 2016 election, the media has largely misconstrued rural Americans as coming from a particular demographic and voting pool. But in reality, rural America is much more demographically and politically diverse. 1 out of 5 rural Americans identify as Black, Latino, or Indigenous, and immigrants are responsible for much of the recent population growth in rural areas. An estimated 15 to 20% of LGBTQ Americans live in rural places, and rural youth are now just as likely to identify as LGBTQ as their urban peers. Another key consideration in advancing climate resilience in these areas is the recognition that language matters. Climate change is another loaded term, and rural people associate climate fixes with government regulation and overreach. But we can work to avoid hyperpolarized words and phrases like environmentalism, conservation, and climate change, because ultimately our goal is to start a conversation. Cultural competency and respect will be central to advancing climate solutions in rural America. So by taking the time to understand rural issues, avoiding polarizing language, and by seeking climate solutions that restore livelihoods as well as landscapes, is how the climate movement can broaden its reach and increase its power in rural America. Some of our most promising solutions to the climate crisis lie in these rural places. Almost all of the nation's energy and food is produced in rural landscapes, which are rich with natural resources essential for our survival and critical in addressing the climate crisis. Focusing on community-inspired solutions, particularly around creating new jobs and improving health, is the way forward. We can all start by recognizing and honoring the grit, determination, and real on-the-ground progress that's coming from rural communities. These communities will be empowered to tackle the climate crisis by relying on locally relevant knowledge, resources, and tools. As a daughter of a farmer from rural Tennessee, I can attest to rural America's work ethic, resilience, and close-knit community connections as being important strengths that can be leveraged to respond to the climate crisis and serve as a model that we can all learn from. We look forward to seeing everyone on Friday and encourage you to make time to attend the afternoon workshop to scope out priority research areas and next steps for collective action in tackling the grand challenge of climate change in rural communities. And a special thank you to Dr. Maggie Sugg, Dr. Gary McCullough, and Dr. Christine Hendren and App State for making this workshop possible. We look forward to seeing you there.